There you go. All right. Just letting folks know we're about to start the show, so please take your seats. We'll begin in a moment. So please get comfortable, and I'll re-enter to make it look dramatic. So just letting you all know.
Today's world is more connected and moves faster than ever before. But these technological advancements bring more threats to our way of life. With roots tracing back to 1917, the Air Force Research Laboratory continues to deliver technologies with speed, building on its strong foundation of scientific research and innovation to support our warfighters in defending our freedoms. Now, through streamlined processes, digital transformation, and a concerted focus, AFRL accelerates science and technology to meet the Department of the Air Force's priorities and prevail in the future. Supporting the Air Force and Space Force, we are one AFRL, one fight.
Welcome, everyone. Shout out to our amazing team. But welcome, everybody, to the 7th annual AFRL Inspire. Come on, are we excited? Let's get excited. Feeling inspired today. We have the privilege of talking to you from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base here in sunny Dayton, Ohio, to really present what we have here, what we do best, our amazing workforce. I mean, look at all of you. You're incredible. You are the people who are making the right changes, working on game-changing technologies, and changing the game as we know it each and every day. You're amazing. But that's what AFRL Inspire is all about, isn't it? Finding the best and brightest, people leading these teams, people making this possible, who are going to be on this stage today to really say what I'm saying a lot better. But I'm Kenneth McNulty. For those who may not know me, or may know me, you may have seen me at some of our AFRL town halls, if you are within the fence here, as we say in AFRL, or folks outside the fence who may know me from some of our live events, other Inspires in the past, or as a co-host for our Lab Life podcast alongside Michelle Miller. A bit more about myself for those who don't know me, so you get to know each other. I'm, like everyone else, here in Dayton. I like to take my dog for long walks. I enjoy film, and I'm also a Dayton-renowned dungeon master. Now, what is that? So for those not familiar, a dungeon master, or game master, is somebody who plays the game Dungeons & Dragons. And a lot of those skills that I use as a leader in that game are going to translate well today. Follow me here. Number 1, improv. That'll come up. 2, the memorization of proper nouns. Already happening, right? And 3, telling a good story, or at least an adequate one. And I will say, for my folks in the back in the command center, I'll try to do less improv so you guys don't get too nervous. So I got you guys. But jokes aside, we are here to be inspired. So, as your Dungeon Master of Ceremonies, and on behalf of AFRL, I want to thank everybody here in our in-person audience for being present today. So, one more round of applause for you guys. Thank you so much for being here. And that goes out to our leadership, our workforce, both present and online. So for those of you online who are watching, thank you as well for joining us. We want to make sure that everyone here is recognized. So whether you're another AFRLer, part of the Department of Defense, somebody in academia, in industry, or just a social media fan looking to be inspired, thank you again for being here. And we ask if you want to give any well wishes, comments, or just thoughts, put those in the comments, and our team behind the scenes will make sure we get back to you. If you're commenting off of YouTube, use the hashtag AFRL Inspire 23. Then we'll find you, and we'll connect. Now for people in person, we use a prop here. If you haven't already, we ask that you silence your cell phones. If you haven't, again, I have now silenced mine. So we're good there. And we ask that in between talks, if you guys are looking to get up for any reason, wait for that period so we don't disrupt anybody on stage or off stage. So again, between talks, you're free to go. So today we are going to hear a lot of very fun things, 9 thought-provoking speakers. We're really going to shake things up, really prove that we are not just one AFRL, we're one AFRL in one fight. And that's what makes Inspire so incredible. is that we're getting the chance to not just see people's journeys or the destination, but how they got there with the right teams, how they made that possible. We are seeing what lessons they learned to push past obstacles and past roadblocks to make the impossible possible. And the group today is diverse. I mean, we are talking people who are engineers, scientists, educators. We're talking biomedical experts, even 2 former Air Force fighter pilots. I mean, come on, that's amazing. And these trailblazers really exemplify the mission I mentioned on top. We are one AFRL fighting one fight, and we're doing it with the right team. Now that said, pushing past all of this and talking about all this goodness, we need the right leader to help show that AFRL is on the forefront of innovation, finding the right people and connecting to the right people in academia and industry, proving that the United States Air Force and the United States Space Force has our support in science and technology, keeping our warfighters safe around the world. Furthering that too, AFRL is supporting the Department of the Air Force's needs with that very same idea. We are on the forefront of science and technology, and with that power, we're keeping our competitive edge now and into the future. But again, we need a great leader to help that. And who better than AFRL Commander, Brigadier General Scott Kane.
Looking for that microphone that I heard was going to be up here on stage. But here it comes, improving just a little bit. It was hiding. There we go. I've spent the majority of my career in the Air Force at the intersection of warfighting and technology. And what I mean by that is I spent most of my career in flight test, not in research. And that was at places like the Herald Grounds of Edwards Air Force Base, literally the stuff that what you see in the right stuff, from the Joshua trees to the desolate landscapes. But that's where I've spent the majority of my time, is seeing those great successes of technologies moving into the Air Force, and also sometimes some tragic failures in that technology. But it wasn't until I got to AFRL that I was really able to grasp something that I didn't realize about that intersection before. And it's kind of this concept of 20 years to an overnight success. And I've seen that mantra a couple times since I've been here in different forums. But I'm shamelessly stealing that and making that my own now, because there's something very special about that. And it took a particular researcher at AFRL to really make me understand what 20 years to an overnight success is. And that was an individual named Bill Barrett. Most of you probably haven't heard the name Bill Barrett. Some of you I know have, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about his story. And here's how I got to know Bill Barrett. So back in August, I was on my way to the Air War College to give a talk on emerging technology to the 200-some students that are in that course down at Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. And in the course of doing that, I reached out to our great AFRL historians and said, hey, I need you to dig into our history and understand what AFRL has done to support technologies, to develop technologies that influenced me and my life and my activity that I've had in the Air Force, which primarily was in test, but also was in the operational side of the Air Force. And so they dug into that, and of course what they came back with was something much greater than that. They came back with a history of the second offset, which was our response to the Soviet Union in the 60s and 70s and their numerical overmatch that they had. And they came back and said, well, there are these things like stealth, and precision attack, and the reconnaissance complex that we built that gave us this advantage. And I used that for that War College talk, but the part that really resonated with me, that really connected with me, was that F-117 piece. And the reason is I flew that aircraft for a few years. In the correction of the record, there are 3 fighter pilots talking today, me being that third. So the F-117, I flew that aircraft for a few years, and there were AFRL technologies that made that possible. Things like fly-by-wire, because it's a crazy looking and crazy flying aircraft without fly-by-wire. The laser-guided bomb and the ability to do precision strike, but of course stealth. That was kind of the key to that aircraft. And the stealth piece of it is where Bill became known to me. And so I'll tell you about Bill Barrett just real quickly here. So Bill was a research technician that worked at this place that's not too far from here, actually. A building called The Barn. I didn't realize this at the time either, that I drive past it on my way to the gate every day, building 821. And at the time, The Barn was called the Aviation Radiation Lab. And Bill was up there and they got this challenge, which was, we have this idea that you change the shape of an aircraft, you can change the radar return. You can make it low observable. And so Bill set out to prove this, to be able to figure out how to measure an aircraft's signature in the presence of a radar. Now you got to think about this. This is back in the 50s. Today, some of the things he did might come across to some of you as toy problems, but to Bill, he could just buy stuff off the shelf that generated the waveforms that he needed. He couldn't just, it wasn't obvious to him or anybody how to put this model in front of the radar and not get a return off from the stick that it's attached to. And he also didn't have high-power computing. He didn't have model-based systems engineering. He was doing this with his head, with a pencil, with his own engineering, with his skills of putting things together. And he did that. He figured out how to measure the radar cross-section of what he decided to use was a model. Building a full-scale aircraft wasn't an option. Just doing this on paper wasn't probably compelling enough, so he built models. He figured out how to do RCS measurement. And in doing so, he wrote the book on not just measurement, but on basically how to do a low observable design. And that means a lot to me, because in my life, in my career, that aircraft that spun out, that became known to the public, probably not as well as its debut in Desert Storm in 1991. Now, somebody in the audience is doing the math. You said 50s, and you fast forwarded to the 90s, that's 40 years. Well, this is 50s and 60s work that manifested in the 70s and 80s, so it still works that it's 20 years to an overnight success. But it really came out on the world stage in 1991 in Desert Storm, where it took to the skies over Iraq, operated with impunity, and really just changed the nature of warfare and brought a lot of pilots back alive. It was about another decade later that I first flew that aircraft. And really, to me, I cut my teeth on that first generation low observable. And I talked about being in flight tests, but my knowledge of that technology that Bill helped develop really pushed forward into my work in developing the next generation of low observable aircraft and things that are in the skies today. Think about the F-35. But even more important and more personal is, interestingly, I'll tell you about being in the F-117 in a time of war and not going to war, because we sent about half of them to Iraq again, and the other half of them went to other places in the world to keep others that were opportunists from trying to take advantage of the fact that we were focused on another war in the Middle East, and so that somebody else in the world didn't take advantage of that. And while I was there doing that mission, my buddies were flying combat missions in Iraq again. And it gets very personal when your friends are in harm's way. And because of the work of those early pioneers like Bill, once again, they executed their mission, they came home alive. And without low observables, many of them might not have, and it became very personal. Now, it took a little twist now from the personal almost to mystical in this next twist in the story. So in my typical day-to-day, racing from one thing to the next, and it was time to start the journey down to Montgomery to go to the War College for the talk. And as I'm racing through the office that last day, the front office staff said, "Hey, there's a guy here named Spike. Some of you know Spike. Spike might even be watching or in the audience here today, and he wants to talk to you about something." And I said, sure, Spike, has my ear, bring him in. And Spike said, hey, there's this guy that we all know that his family is about to have a ceremony for Bill, or for this guy, because he passed away. And he's somebody that's really important to us. He's somebody who, a lot of people in AFRL know. And I said, who is this? And he said, it's a guy named Bill Barrett. And somehow I had found Bill right after I got here and learned this lesson from him about what it takes to develop technology, what it takes to change the world, what it takes to affect warfighting. I found Bill, and then in this, perhaps just a cosmic coincidence, but it seemed a little more than that to me, he found me as well. And so I'm inspired by Bill. I'm inspired by what he did that changed the future, that affected my life so deeply. But this is the kind of stuff that we do and have done since our inception at AFRL, before it was even named AFRL. And it's not just AFRL that does it. It's, as was already mentioned, it's the people who make that happen. And so as I'm inspired by Bill, today you're going to get a chance to hear from other thought leaders in AFRL. And my hope is that these pioneers, who are often quiet pioneers, going to affect and change the future in the next 20 years, are inspiring to you. And really what I hope is that all of the people of AFRL are inspiring to you every day as they are to me. So thank you and enjoy the afternoon.
Well, thank you again, General Kane, for those kind words of encouragement and getting people hyped. We're feeling inspired? Feeling excited? Yeah, thank you. That was all you. So, as we continue this, you mentioned in the talk here, we have, we're one AFRL, one fight. We've been saying it, but what do we mean by that? Well, today we're going to have 10 speakers that are going to help show how we're doing that. And I should mention, too, that was mentioned at the top, but midway through all of that, we will have our intermission. It'll be about 15 minutes. We'll let you know when that's happening, when to expect it, but I'll be the one to tell you, so don't worry. That said, back to those 10 talks. These people are the ones that, working alongside you, we said at the top, are our workforce changing the world as we know it today, supporting that one AFRL, one fight mission, and making the impossible possible. And when they get up here to explain that story, it'll make more sense as they go through a variable amount of topics to get to that point. That stated, though, we are going to see a lot of very interesting people up here, a lot of incredible talks that are going to be able to capture the mind and the imagination. So before we hit that intermission and after, let's talk about who we're going to be seeing here. So we have a lineup. Let's kind of walk through who we're expecting here. Starting off, we're going to have a mechanical engineer who's going to be telling us that failure isn't the end of a project, but only part of the process to get there. Second, we have a program manager who's showing us that we can find the right talent while championing diversity and inclusion. And we have two materials engineers working hard to show we're forging new partnerships. An expert in autonomous unmanned aerial craft system control. A chemist turned programmer who's changing how we're connecting and working with partners. Big fan. And we have a biomedical engineer who's showing us that, well, we can turn science fiction into reality. We have a physicist showing us that it's relatively easy to learn more about general intelligence. And two former Air Force fighter pilots talking about how we're able to amplify warfighter culture. So you can see, this lineup is looking pretty good. That stated, though, you're looking at a failed chemist right here who found the solution in journalism. Again, my writers are amazing, but jokes aside, fortunately or unfortunately for everyone here, you're going to be hearing a lot more jokes like that. So, above all, though, for those of you who may have watched certain films this year, I have learned one thing above all else: I am Kenough. But as we move ahead here, we are going to be making sure that we kind of dive in, like I said, to some very exciting talks, exciting ideas, and exciting history. So I want you all to buckle up, get ready, and get set, because this flight is about to go off. But first, let's talk about some pre-flight history while you all get ready. Beforehand, last year, we did have two amazing historians who were able to come here. One's the audience today. They were able to cover the Air Force's 75th anniversary, or its 75th birthday. And that was the theme we went on, our history, our heritage, and how AFRL's been a part of that from the beginning. Now, I should mention, I did have a minor in history, so while I'm not quite them, looking over you, Jeff, I am going to do my best. So using that skill and my skill in lab life, I do know a bit about the history of AFRL Inspire. So let's go on a journey together. Back in 2015, a long time ago, we had two people with an amazing idea. What if we got the best and brightest to tell, like we've been saying, how AFRL is a one-team, one-fight kind of idea, how we're working together to change the world. But these people are going to show it on stage. One of the dynamic duo that made that happen was Dr. Carrie Ann Hobbs, a brainchild of hers and the person we'll get to next. And Carrie Ann Hobbs, you may know her as the self-proclaimed rocket science Barbie, and as one of our talks last year, Driver's Ed for Space AI. Now, that talk and every other talk we've done since 2015, you can see on our AFRL YouTube channel, any point. So you can kind of go through that history at your leisure, get a feel for how it all went. It's pretty cool, trust me. But I did mention duo. The other part of that was Dan Berrigan. And I should mention from the top, he was one of the first hosts of AFRL Inspire. So no pressure on me, but I'm gonna do my best. Also, I love that Dan heads out there, it's very good. So you'll see pictures of that online, don't worry, folks. So Dan Berrigan, as we're going to go into this, he is no better person to start off this event than he himself. He was there at the beginning. And Dan is, we mentioned here when we're kind of running through everything, was that he was turned a programmer. He was a chemist. Now, still is, but programming is not easy. And let's talk about that. He is following the footsteps of many people before him. We're talking Silicon Valley folks who started off their projects in their garages. Dan took more of an underground approach, literally, starting a lot of what he's talking about today in his basement. So it's incredible, like trust me, when you get up here, he's gonna wow you. And we don't know where a journey's ever gonna take us, but we do know if we find the right team, anything's possible. So please, join me in welcoming to the stage to tell his story about #TackleTheToil, Dr. Dan Berrigan.
Time. I don't know about you, but I hate it when the government wastes my time. In The Art of War, Sun Tzu wrote, "The value of time, that is, of being a little bit ahead of your opponent, is often more valuable than superior resources or greater numbers." I love the urgency of this message. It's also a reminder that no matter how big or small your team or budget is, that you can sabotage it by wasting everyone's time. And to realize the angst that I hold in this, we have to do a little bit of arithmetic. So first, if we look at AFRL, about 3/5 of our workforce are scientists and engineers. That's 6,500 people. Now, if we assume a 40-hour-a-week work schedule, how many hours does AFRL have each week to accomplish its mission? That's right, 260,000. Sounds like a lot, right? But you got to remember, you work for the Department of Defense. So your day probably looks a little bit like mine. I put my hot coffee down on my desk. I open up my laptop. I turn it on, and I wait. And so I say, I'll do something else. All right, I'll go get that data off that experiment I ran last night. Oh, gotta air gap it, I gotta scan it, and I wait. Oh, cool, the computer's back up. Let me go check my email. Ooh, it's encrypted. Wait. That time you thought you had feels real finite, real fast. And compounding that challenge is the fact that what we work on here at AFRL is broad and complex. From quantum sciences to autonomy, from advanced materials to biotechnology, from directed energy to satellites and all their interwoven complexities. More than that, where one of these technologies and when they're going to be a game changer on the battlefield is a guessing game sometimes. We don't always know. From penicillin to plastics, transformational discoveries have been largely teams of intelligent people or clever people Iterated failure and luck. We cannot forget the luck part, because on this journey in discovery, there is no shortcuts. I'm Dan Berrigan, and aside from being a serial complainer sometimes, my time in AFRL has been spent largely investigating advanced manufacturing technology. And just a few years ago, I was asked to lead a group in this area, and we felt the same challenges of limited time, limited budget, limited people, and having to stay one step ahead of our competition. And so, it was in this area, we had to change the math that our team was based on. First, productivity. That is, how much time can our team stay focused on task? Multiply that by 2, scale. How much mass from our partners and collaborators can we put on the targets we care about? The product of those two is faster outcomes, meaning that an increase in one or both of these ideas is a force multiplier. And so, now you might say, increasing productivity in the world's largest bureaucracy, that sounds like a challenge. Or doing it with scale when, you have limited a couple people on the research group. And you're right. I mean, when I wanted to collaborate with a partner in Atlanta on advanced robotics, I was mailing hard drives. It took 4 days to get that sucker from here to Atlanta. That is 96 hours wasted. You know why? Toil. You know what toil is? It is the manual, mundane, devoid of any enduring value task that takes us away from what we really care about. And it was in this crucible of urgency that the AFRL Google Cloud pilot was born. With it, we were able to connect with our partners and simultaneously analyze data from our experiments. We were able to jump in and simultaneously develop code with those same people. And we are finally able, with this software, to boldly go where everyone else had gone before, into the 21st century. Unfortunately, as our team was capturing momentum, the pandemic took hold, and the IT ecosystem around us completely unraveled. My colleagues were organizing critical research tasks over group text messages. They were waiting until 3 o'clock in the morning to get onto a VPN so they could check their email. That said, not to humble brag at all, but our small team didn't miss a beat. But I couldn't let my colleagues struggle like this. So I reached out to some senior leaders and I said, hey, we might be able to do something to fix it. What do you think? What could we do? Their response, make it go viral. In hindsight, probably not the best choice of words for March of 2020, right? But that's what we did. 20 users became 50, 50 became 100, 100, 500. By the end of 2020, we had over 1,000 users from across the lab. The scale, or the scale of it was overwhelming. We couldn't keep up. To add one new user to this platform meant I had to enter 15 different pieces of information manually. Doing it once was a task. Annoying, but a task. Doing it 30 times a day is toil. In other words, you all were wasting my time. And that's really where I learned the first lesson of this project. And that is, it isn't fixed until it's fixed for everyone. And so we had one solution: automate the crap out of everything. There's one problem, though. I'm a chemist. I have no idea how to code. And so enter Lauren Ferguson. Lauren is a PhD researcher, PhD in mathematics, and a whiz at software development. And moreover, she shared the same passion for fixing this problem as I did. And with it, we started tackling all sorts of aspects of this pilot, from help desk tickets to, if I might say so myself, creating some pretty dank memes. But what Lauren did was uncover a hidden gem of this pilot. And that is, as an idea and a concept grows and takes a life of its own, people are going to want to gravitate and take ownership of it and run with it. You have to let them. And really what it taught me is the next lesson, which is that it's not just who we fund, but it's who we inspire to work on our problems with us. And so what Lauren did was inspire me to put on my big boy pants and do what I should have done a long time ago and learn how to code. I did what any millennial would do. I binge watched YouTube. From Python to JavaScript, APIs, maybe a dusting of cat videos. But with it, soon after, Lauren and I were cranking out all sorts of self-service automation scripts so that our users could then, on demand, get shared drive access, create groups, add their external partners on demand. We got the governance we needed to keep it from being the Wild West, and they got rid of a gatekeeper in myself waiting for me to answer the email. So at this point, we had productivity, we had scale, we had no money. And so that's where we really had to reach out to each one of you, our wingmen. And we asked you, we said, hey, well, actually, back up. Before that, we realized that just because the pandemic, or that the needs of external collaboration weren't going to go away just when the pandemic subsides, that we needed to keep this going. But we were afraid that our leadership only saw this as a video calling machine and not what it really was. Key element of accessing the scale of our external collaborators. And so to address that, we reached out to you, our wingmen, and we said, hey, this pilot could very well go away, and we need your help. And so we put a slide deck in a chat channel, opened it up to everybody and said, hey, we need you to share your stories of impact. Tell us how this changed your world. And they did, one at a time, 2, then 4, then 20, all the way up to 150 different slides of impact from across the lab. The message was clear. Our scientists were not going back to mailing hard drives. Armed with your stories, we went into battle. We enlisted the help of AFRL Public Affairs and married that with the Google marketing team in order to create a blog entry where the AFRL commander declared, AFRL will collaborate to innovate. Soon after, Google Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai pulled on that thread and gave AFRL a shout out in a public forum. And it was thanks to you and your stories that gave us the time we needed to address the 485 some odd controls that allowed us to get our full authorization to operate. That authorization to operate at impact level 4 is a first of its kind in the Department of Defense for all the Google apps. But more importantly than that is that what we documented and what we shared can be leveraged across the Department of Defense, across any stakeholder who needs those tools to accomplish their own mission. And so maybe, just maybe, we can start to spur some competition between these big tech giants. And that's really where I learned the third lesson of this story, or this journey, is that return on investment isn't just in dollars. It's in influence. It's in seeing a colleague or an employee realize their full potential and it's in time. Let's go back to that slide deck for a minute. If you look and pull on the thread of each of these stories, you'll see one of your colleagues taking that simple 40-hour work week and multiplying it by 2x, 4x, 8x. Our small research team of 2 or 3 turned it into a team of 25, working with professors and experts and small businesses across the country, from Harvard to the University of Utah. The AFRL Minority Leaders Program uses it to connect its students in HBCUs with their mentors at AFRL so that they can grow these young scientists' careers. The Air Force Chief of Staff stood up a group of airmen and guardians and said, hey, what can we do with generative AI? They reached out to the MIT AI Accelerator and our own Act 3 team to create a chatbot that answers questions about Air Force policy like, hey, am I allowed to grow that mullet I've been thinking about? We've recently gone global, connecting our AFRL researchers with our partners in the United Kingdom, their Defense Science and Technology Laboratory, so we can accelerate advanced materials research. And the chief scientist of the Air Force used our platform when asked by Congress to develop a study on microelectronics, and she needed to connect academia experts with industry and government. And she avoided the mother of all toil. And you'll know it when I tell you it. It is the file name, final report _ final _ final _ final _ version 4.docx. And what's more, we've grown and expanded these capabilities of collaboration with the AFRL digital laboratory environment. So now our S&Es, our scientists and engineers, can collaborate on software. They can collaborate in program management. They can do systems engineering models and physics models, and soon so much more. You know, when Lauren and I started on this journey, our goal wasn't to buy some Gmail. Our goal was to solve a problem. And in doing so, what we tried to do, or what we did, was we listened to our users and we aggressively sought waivers in order to give them productivity. We connected with stakeholders in government and allies in government and in industry to leverage the power of scale. And in doing so, I'd like to think that we changed the trajectory of AFRL's digital capabilities. And so my question to you is, how can you use these ideas and these tools in your own research to accelerate your productivity? How can you connect with your partners better in ways that the tools before would never allow you to do so you can access scale? And what more can we do from a digital capabilities perspective to keep you from wasting your time? Because at the end of the day, time is the only resource that us and our adversaries have exactly the same amount of. And in order to stay one step ahead, we have to tackle the toil. Thank you.
Hard to follow that. Wow. So Dan, as you've seen, has done amazing work finding wingmen around the lab to make the right connections to push us further into the future, or the 21st century, as he said. And the important thing is, as you saw what he mentioned, Google recognized us with an award. It proves that what he's doing is not only working, it's essential. So one more round of applause for his team. That is incredible. Now our next speaker is working on wingmen of a different kind. Matt Duquette has been moving for about 20 years in his career to prove that human-machine teaming is not only possible, it's essential. AI has been all the rage in the news recently, but it's something AFRL's been working on for a while. And Matt's career is a prime example of how that's being done, how we find a technology early and not only help lead its process and development, but we're there when it matters. So, join me in welcoming to the stage Matt Duquette, as he shows us why we should embrace all that's possible with the future of human-machine teaming.
Hi. Who's heard anything about AI lately? Yeah, all good stuff, right? Nothing but good stuff. Who's afraid of AI? Maybe a little afraid. Show of hands. Hands. Sir, what are you afraid of? I saw you go. What are you afraid of? Out of our control. That's a great example. We live in a time when we're truly afraid of our machines taking over, taking our jobs, taking our identities, becoming smarter than ourselves. One of the most human of traits, the ability to create art, is now being convincingly done by AI. This was done by AI, by my 11-year-old son, for free. But what's scarier than AI questioning our humanity? AI making life and death decisions. The fear of the drone, an AI killing machine, has been with us for years. The image of robots with lifeless cameras designating targets and launching weapons is the stuff of sci-fi nightmares. Combining the power of drones with the complexity of AI is something any reasonable person would fear. I'm Matt Duquette. I have spent my career at AFRL building autonomy for aircraft. I started out more than 20 years ago building concepts for pairing autonomous airplanes with Air Force fighters. I have simulated and flown numerous small UAVs, or drones, if some of you prefer, to bring eyes in the sky for all manner of U.S. military forces. I have been working on the concept of autonomy for airplanes before many in the public ever considered that to be a thing. I have seen the world grow afraid of what AI means for the way we fight war. The fear is valid, and I don't dismiss it. But I want to show you another view. I want to show you the role that AI can play, and has been playing for years, in making our human beings better decision makers and safer operators of our machines. Because the reality is, AI isn't just a technology that makes machines better. It makes people better. And the partnership of the two is getting stronger every year. AI is used to make airplanes autonomous. Whether as individual airplanes or in teams, autonomy is the ability for a machine to manage itself at some level. Teams of autonomous airplanes isn't sci-fi. It's something we work on at AFRL, and an important part of our Air Force's future. Autonomy is critical to our nation's ability to fight and deter war. I will show you how we bring out the best in our operators by bringing out the best in our autonomous machines. Who here has flown on an airliner? Yeah, all of us, right? Almost all of us. Some here probably did yesterday or will tomorrow. If you have flown on a modern commercial plane, you have put your lives in the hands of AI. You may ask, how is that AI? The plane isn't chatting with anyone or making any decisions. That's the pilot's job. But there is AI at play. Complex calculations keeping the engines healthy and the plane on track to its destination. Modern commercial planes track thousands of parameters and can even give the pilot step-by-step instructions in case of an emergency. Now, this is what a flight engineer's panel looks like. Modern commercial planes automate the many tasks that used to require a third crewmate. Without AI, we wouldn't be able to fly with just two pilots, and the AI makes flying safer and more efficient. But the AI isn't in charge. The pilots know the purpose of the flight, where they're going, when they're going to be there, and most importantly, the value of lives of passengers and crew. The AI makes flying easier and more precise. Why spend time with hands on controls and eyes glued to instruments just to maintain speed and direction. That's what the machine is best at. What the human is best at is understanding the why, purpose, and priority. What I just described is a principle of HABA-MABA. Besides being a really fun thing to say, HABA-MABA means there are things that humans are best at and there are things that machines are best at. First described in 1951 at a time of mostly mechanical devices. It holds true for our relationship with AI today. HABA-MABA describes a partnership between people and our machines. It's the partnership of the two that yields the best result. HABA-MABA is how we harness the best in our operators here in the Air Force. Like symbiosis in nature, HABA-MABA is how we survive and dominate in modern warfare. Now, let's think about machines and the authority we give them. Think of this as the 3 A's of AI for machines: automation, autonomy, agency. Automation is easy to accept. Have you used an ATM, driven with cruise control? That's automation. Autonomy, we've already talked about a little. Autonomy is the ability for a machine to manage itself at some level. But what we really fear is agency. Agency is the ability for a machine to make decisions and act with broad authority. When we talk about autonomy in airplanes, it's easy to mistake it as agency, but it really isn't the case. Let's relate autonomy and HABA-MABA so we can understand why it isn't the agency we fear it might be. Today, we operate sophisticated airplanes remotely. We call these drones remotely piloted aircraft. They're closely monitored and tightly controlled by their human pilots. But in the future, we envision operations that require teams of airplanes working in large numbers. We know we can remove the human from harm's way and enhance our operations at the same time, but only if we trust our machines to manage themselves more. With increased trust, we give the operator the ability to focus on the higher purpose of the mission. The mission will still belong to the person, but only if the mundane can belong to the machine. So let's think about AI trust for a minute, using an example we can all relate to: the cars we drive. Many cars today, even the most affordable ones, can brake in an emergency, stay in a lane, or adapt to speed and cruise control. These are all examples of how we are moving from automation to autonomy by building trust. Each feature is introduced to the public, and we're testing them in real-world conditions to become more comfortable with the vehicle having more control. It's not hard to see how the combination of these features can be used to make vehicles more autonomous. Some of the most audacious manufacturers are already implementing autonomous driving. We hear about that quite often, don't we? The relationship between the vehicle and the operator is changing, sometimes making us safer, but sometimes making us more complacent. To build the trust we need for autonomous cars on our highways, we have to consider the operator as much as the machine. We have to balance the HABA-MABA relationship. So then how do we realize a future with autonomous airplanes and teams of airplanes for complex combat missions? Like the driverless car, it's as much a matter of trust as of technology. We have the technology today to make airplanes autonomous. We can write software to manage large amounts of data, and we can make optimal decisions in the face of changing objectives. But trust is how you build the partnership between the machine and its human operator. Through the evolution of development and tests here at AFRL, we are building the trust that our airplanes will make good decisions. Pilotless planes start with the simple tasks. Autopilots that track their commanded course, monitor the engines, or watch for low fuel that may indicate the need to return to base. These baby steps are how we move from remotely piloted to remotely commanded teams of airplanes. Trusted machines that won't collide with each other, won't fly where they're not supposed to, and won't confuse friend and enemy. AI design for complex operation requires understanding the limits. We build trusted layers of watchdogs in the system, ready to raise the alarm if a command is out of bounds or a system is acting abnormally. We have pioneered these techniques at AFRL, and they are the cornerstone of safe AI implementation. We don't simply release the AI to understand, decide, and act. We watch the AI to ensure that only reasonable commands are executed. With this increased trust, we give the operator more time and mental capacity to consider the goals, express intent, and observe outcomes. That is how AI makes the human better. In a HABA-MABA relationship, the operator is presented with courses of action and what-if scenarios by the autonomous system. We envision a future where teams of aircraft are managing themselves throughout the mission, executing a high-level intent from their human operator. The hype surrounding AI can cause us to overstep, assume too much risk. But our fear of AI can cause us to miss opportunities to truly revolutionize our operations. We don't give our airplanes agency to do whatever they want. We give them autonomy to manage the mundane. We set bounds for our machines and the AI that powers them, incorporating watchdogs and human override. Our researchers and developers here at AFRL play a critical role in bringing reliable autonomy through advanced, responsible AI development. Because the right AI ensures the human is part of the solution. What humans are best at is understanding purpose and limits, ethics and morality. We don't let airplanes do things outside the commander's intent. Autonomy and the AI that powers it are the next great deterrence of war for our nation. We must build autonomy, not by focusing on how to make our machines better, but rather by focusing on how to make the partnership between humans and machines better. Thank you. Okay.
Wow. Matt's team is really pushing forward what we can do with unmanned aircraft and really changing the way we fight wars. So everybody, incredible. Let's give another round of applause to Matt. Amazing, amazing. Now, what's amazing is Matt has had the privilege to work on one of our prized and first Vanguard programs for some time, and he's now getting the chance to see that Skyborg technology transition as it gets closer to helping airmen out on whatever mission they're at. And that capability is going to be incredible. Imagine, not only keeping folks out of harm's way, but helping with situational awareness, having that wingman partner, and beyond. It's going to be incredible what we see happen in the future involving it. So thank you again, Matt. Very excited to see how this transitions. So, that stated, you may be wondering what's going on here. So this comes into play, I promise. We're going to have a little fun here. So we've talked a lot about partners and how we're trying to find the right people for the right place, just as Matt's done, just as we did with Dan. And our next speaker is going to take that to another level. But first, this is going to be going back to high school for many of you. Humor me. Parlez-vous français? Oui? Non? Ce n'est pas de problème. Some of them responded, some of you, thank you, and you were able to translate what that meant in your head. That's exactly what Dr. Craig Przybilla did as he went over on an AFRL mission, an international mission, to help translate what we needed to our allies and back to us. Sounds kind of like a secret agent, trust me. He'll talk about it more. So, please, welcome to the stage, Dr. Craig Przybilla, as he covers international missions, research opportunities and capabilities, growing a family, and above all, expecting the unexpected.
Les portes de l'avenir sont ouvertes à ceux qui savent les pousser. The doors to the future are open to those who know how to push through them. This French expression tells us that the future belongs to those who know how to break through the doors blocking their way. I became a scientist and engineer because I love to solve problems and innovate ways to improve the world around me. However, in my research and in life, I have often encountered doors or barriers blocking my way. Have you ever felt like you were in a room full of doors, unsure of which one to take? Perhaps some of them were locked when you tried them, or others, when opened, only revealed dark passages. My name is Craig Prisbilla, and I have worked as a composite research engineer for the last 15 years and focused much of my career on the characterization of fiber-reinforced composites, particularly ceramic ones in extreme environments. Today, I would like to share with you my experience living in France during the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2018, after many years as the Composite Performance Research Team lead, I was ready for a change and decided to apply for the Engineering and Scientists Exchange Program, or ESEP. This is a Department of the Air Force program that enables its scientists and engineers to work for 2 years embedded in the research laboratory of one of our allied nation partners. I was selected to go to Paris, France, and work at the Office National d'Études et de Recherche Aérospatiale, or ONERA, the French Aerospace Laboratory. For non-English-speaking assignments, participants spend the first 6 months at the Defense Language Institute in Washington, D.C. As you can tell, I learned to speak French with hardly any accent. C'est très magnifique, no? In 2019, in August, my wife Laura, 6 kids, 6, and I boarded an airplane for France with visions of amazing French cuisine, beautiful French gardens, and expansive French chateaus, along with my excitement at the opportunity to work with some of the leading experts in the world in my field. Well, at least this was the vision of Laura and me. Our children were not quite as excited when we told them that they would have to move across the Atlantic and start at a new school, not knowing anyone. Despite the near mutiny, we arrived safe in France and moved into our apartment overlooking the beautiful Seine River. Laura and I felt like we had won the proverbial jackpot. Well, as you can imagine, things did not go quite as we had planned. When we first arrived in Paris, we thought it would be amazing to take a family picture in front of the Eiffel Tower. We were having a wonderful time being photographed until we realized that the couple pretending to take pictures next to us was actually running off with my wife's purse that contained her passport and cell phone. To make matters worse, the next week when I was picking up my wife's new cell phone in our obnoxiously large 9-passenger van that should never be driven on narrow Parisian streets by an amateur, I sideswiped another car while parallel parking. Then, to top that off, a few weeks later, the French transportation workers initiated the longest transportation strike in French history, making it impossible to get to work, let alone anywhere else. Now, I don't want you to feel sorry for me at this point, because we pushed forward, we adapted. We recovered my wife's passport, and we got her a new cell phone despite the fender bender. I even discovered that I could ride my bike to and from work each day to beat the impossible gridlock of the strike. By January 2020, we had encountered many closed doors during our foreign adventure, but were adapting to the situation and pushing forward. Unfortunately, as we adapted to the situation, so did a virus. In mid-February 2020, when my family was on holiday in Venice, Italy, we learned through news reports that the hospitals around Venice were filling up with patients infected with a new coronavirus. Within a few weeks, France and the rest of Europe were completely locked down. We could not leave our apartment for more than 1 hour each day, and then when we were outside, we had to stay within 1 kilometer of our apartment. We responded to COVID-19 by again assessing the situation and trying to find ways to adapt in the face of the constantly evolving environment. Some of the things that we tried worked. while others failed spectacularly. For example, we created a new family schedule where we would all get up together, eat breakfast, and then divide up into zones, lots of zones, around our apartment where we would focus on online school and work. Some of the children adapted well to the new normal, while others struggled significantly. Looking outward, we found inspiration through the explosion of posts on social media of examples how others were coping. Leveraging this collective creativity, we started to come up with examples of our own. For example, we held a family egg drop competition where we engineered ways to prevent an egg from breaking when dropped off the 4th floor balcony of the stairwell in our apartment building. I lost this competition, unfortunately. We bought a dozen Nerf guns and held Nerf gun capture the flag competitions in the courtyard of our apartment complex with the neighbor kids. Now, we may not have worn masks, but we were wearing our safety goggles. We held photography art competitions and board game marathons. Our family even grew in number when my wife gave birth to our 7th child, Benjamin, in an inflatable birth pool in the bedroom of our apartment. Now, this is a good story, but it will have to wait for another time. As my family learned to adapt to living through COVID lockdowns, I also had to learn to adapt to teleworking for most of the remaining 18 months of my exchange program. One problem that was particularly challenging that I was able to work on from home was focused on characterizing composite fiber architecture and 3-dimensional data sets. My team at AFRL previously had a lot of success at developing automated tools for fiber identification and tracking in composite images. These energy-based, neighbor-dependent segmentation and geometric-based object detection algorithms worked really well for data collected using optical or electron microscopy. In contrast, this data set provided to me by my colleagues at Onera was captured over short time frames using X-ray computed tomography, think CT scanner for materials, during active mechanical loading, and contained much more image noise than the data that I had worked with previously. Everything that my AFRL team had developed was useless. To solve this problem, I dove into learning new convolutional neural network-based machine learning approaches for object detection. In my research, I discovered a set of open source tools coded by Facebook Research to find objects like people, buildings, and trees in images posted on social media. I hypothesized that this same toolbox, Detectron 2, would work just as well at finding things like fibers, pores, and cracks in my composite data sets. After carefully training the data using images that I had labeled, I was able to get over 95% detection, where all previous methods that I had tried yielded less than 10%. 95%, baby. After this, I continued to augment the open source tools with my French collaborators with an algorithm that would assign a geometric description, think circles, to the fibers in order to construct digital models to study the composite performance as a function of the composite architecture. Now, as I have looked over my experience in France, I've come to realize that innovation in life and in research is dependent on 2 key principles. 1, iterative adaptation, and 2, strategic partnership. First, let's consider the concept of iterative adaptation. A famous United States Air Force colonel, John Boyd, put it this way. He said that we first must observe, then orient ourselves to the current situation, next decide what to do about it, and then act. He called this the OODA loop. It is a loop because we must continually cycle through observing, orienting, deciding, and acting as a situation continually evolves. Often, those who cycle through the loop more quickly are most successful. Think pilots in air-to-air combat. As we had to learn to first live in a foreign country and then survive in a foreign country during a pandemic, we had to adapt. We changed the ways we did things. We rode bikes instead of driving cars. We came up with new, creative ways to spend our time to replace the old ways that were no longer options. And as the situation continued to evolve, we continued to adapt. Second, let's consider the concept of iterative adaptation coupled with the concept of strategic partnership. Admittedly, often the ideas that we employed were not our own. Social media provided inspiration for our family during lockdowns just as much as open source software provided inspiration for my research. Our neighbors were essential to our survival during COVID just as much as me working with my French collaborators was essential to solving a difficult materials characterization problem with noisy data. Now, taking us back to our room of doors, I want you to consider the concepts of iterative adaptation and strategic partnership as a strategy to break through the doors that block our way. Don't let the closed doors stop you. Open them. Step into the dark passages and move forward. As you encounter dead ends, don't be afraid to iterate and try new doors. Along the way, you will be most successful if you partner with others. They will have found keys to some of the locked doors or know which doors are most promising. Pause now and consider a challenge that is currently before you, or a door that is currently closed to you. It may be a research question, a job challenge, or a relationship. Are there immediate actions that you can take to move forward, or people that you can partner with to help you? Resolve today to try some of these ideas and find others to work with to achieve your objective. As you move forward and encounter setbacks, don't be afraid to iterate on your ideas until you break through and achieve success. I promise you, your future is there, right through that door. Now go and push through it. Thank you.
C'est très bien, oui? Excuse my French. Should probably take this off. But that said, Craig had a great example of showing us that opening the right doors can give us partnerships otherwise thought unattainable, solving problems and really helping us forge into the future in a better way. And he did this all while strengthening our partnerships in allied nations, while showing that resiliency is key during these events, especially while being in a Parisian flat with 7 kids. Another round of applause for Craig. Come on. Now, our next speaker is working on connections of a different variety, not just human to human. As we work through this and kind of think this thought out, I want to give you guys a question here to kind of pause it. Because today we've been thinking about partners in allied nations, wingmen in and out of the lab, collaborators. But what if you had the chance to talk to somebody different? What if you had the likes to talk to Marie Curie, Einstein, Isaac Newton, someone from the past to help inform a problem in the present? Dr. Alex Alanese is exploring this very idea through our lens of general intelligence and trying to show through the right connections, well, a lot more can be possible. Without further ado, let's let the man himself explain it. Please welcome to the stage Dr. Alanese as he goes through his talk, Helen Keller, ChatGPT, and Einstein.
Imagine a child going blind and deaf at 19 months old. Imagine this child not getting professional help for 5 years. This was the story of Helen Keller. Yet she managed to master 5 languages. She published a dozen books and became a renowned speaker. Her teacher and companion for the next 50 years, Miss Annie Sullivan, arrived in 1887, 5 years after Helen had gone blind and deaf. Within a month, running cool water on one of Helen's hands, Annie made signing symbols on Helen's other hand, which Helen suddenly realized represented a code for water. This was the moment Helen Keller joined our world. Hello, I'm Dr. Alex Alanis. I've served in the Air Force, worked in industry, academia, and government. I'm a principal physicist at AFRL. Thanks to AFRL, I get to work with Space Force, Army, Navy, Marines, our allies, industry and academia, each, like my wife's career, dedicated to protecting our democracies. I also happen to be a former Los Alamos nuclear weapons physicist. So I appreciate the challenges nation-states face in acquiring the know-how of nuclear explosives. Today's experts in artificial general intelligence, or AGI, tell us AGI will take its place besides nuclear and biological weapons as another source of existential risk. Unlike nuclear weapons, powerful AGI technologies are at the fingertips of 8-year-olds, criminal enterprises, dictatorships. In order to understand the promises and threats of AGI, we need a theory of general intelligence. An approach to such a theory hit me one day in my garage lab when I was thinking about Helen Keller. This inspiration led me to, I'm not kidding you, to building an avatar of Albert Einstein. You can talk to Einstein. You can ask about favorite foods, World War II and atom bombs, or the theory of general relativity. I'm going to walk you through a 30-plus year thought experiment that'll probably last the rest of my life. It'll go from Helen Keller to Einstein Avatar to a framework for measuring general intelligence that may be useful to produce general intelligence. In order to understand how Helen Keller could have built the complex richness of the world inside her mind using only a sense of touch, I imagine someone using pegboards to record her association of water to related concepts, to drinking water, to boiling water to cook vegetables, to boiling water to wash whites. On an adjacent pegboard dedicated to beverages, coffee, tea, and so on, there'd be lots of links going back and forth. We'd soon need to move to a tall tower with balconies on each floor to put more pegboards on to continue our connection process. We'd bring over the pegboards from the previous slide on all things water at home and put them on the 15th floor. The 14th floor we dedicate to weather and water, rain, snow, thunderstorms, and hurricane. The 16th floor we dedicate to bodies of water, lakes, rivers, swimming pools, and oceans. We'd soon need to move into a taller tower. The 30th floor we dedicate to world history. And we'd send a link from hurricane on the 14th floor to the sinking of many of the ships of the Spanish Armada coming to conquer Queen Elizabeth's England. Decades later, as a renowned speaker, we'd be in the tallest tower, its spiderweb framework capturing a representation of Helen Keller's understanding of the world at the apex of her life. It's what we do. We build complex spiderweb representations of our existence. Well, in order to test the utility of this idea, I turned to Albert Einstein. I translated the idea of pegboards with pictures with sentences to text files with sentences with probabilities. There's a floor on special relativity with sentences on special relativity. There's a floor on general relativity with sentences on general relativity. There's a floor on wives, friends, children, and so on, and I stopped at 101 floors. The 101 floor Einstein Avatar Tower looks like this. These are 101 text files or floors in 3D. The 4th floor contains a text file with sentences on music. The 15th floor contains a text file with sentences on cosmology. If we go to the 4th floor, we'd find sentences on Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms, and classical music that Einstein had thoughts on. Those strings in Einstein Avatar represent probabilities, linking sentences within a floor and between floors or files. I assign these probabilities based on Einstein's history or my understanding of his physics. Some of those strings are thick, corresponding to high probabilities. Some are thin, corresponding to low probabilities. To add life to this construct, I added 101 chatbots. Customer service chatbots often give us frustratingly wrong answers. Einstein Avatar is not dumb. If you ask it, did Mozart help your creativity when you were developing relativity? Einstein Avatar will find the floor on music and the best sentence.
Listening to Mozart allowed me to relax and focus. Mozart boosted my creativity when I created both theories of relativity.
Some possible follow-on replies from the same floor. Wagner was more popular than Mozart during the Hitler years. Or from the floor on Friends, Michel Bessa was my best friend and created a sounding board during my youth. The relation between these sentences being either Mozart or creativity. If you didn't know this, ChatGPT can take on the persona of famous people, Einstein being one of them. Well, since the sentences in Einstein text files don't change, I had ChatGPT rephrase the Einstein Avatar sentences using Einstein's persona. For fun, I found a bot that speaks with Einstein's voice.
While I formulated the theories of relativity, indulging in Mozart's compositions amplified my creative faculties.
We're still on the same sentence. Listening to Mozart boosted my creativity. It's just been rephrased by ChatGPT in Einstein's voice. However, ChatGPT alone hallucinates. It drifts off. It invents false facts. Einstein Avatar can't because its links are based on facts. So what do we have so far? We have a spiderweb framework for general intelligence of interest to the ModSim community. We go through life connecting bits of information. In kindergarten, our view of the world is very simple, and we make the connection that fish live in oceans, a little bit later that oceans form part of a planet, and somewhat later that fish evolved from simpler life. And after a whole lot of learning, we come to appreciate the challenges of commercial fishing versus climate change. Eventually, our realities get very rich, and there's a lot of math to measure and exploit these graph networks. ChatGPT 3.5, think about this, couldn't draw a square when I asked it to relate Queen Elizabeth, England, and hurricane. Eventually, ChatGPT 4 connected the dots into a square. Oh, a hurricane did a lot of damage to the ships of the Spanish Armada coming to conquer Queen Elizabeth's England. We shouldn't be afraid of AGI until it can create spiderweb frameworks as rich or richer than ourselves. While spiderweb framework technology can power avatars, it's agency or self-determination that's the real goal of AGI research. I'm working on it. For data, I'm using a trilogy that I wrote that spans from 1926 to a landing on Mars in 2050 and beyond. Main characters will begin with empty spiderweb frameworks. As my algorithms read the books, the spiderweb frameworks will get richer with every turn of the page. Halfway through the trilogy, maybe, I'll give the characters motivation and choice, and I'll get as many trilogies as computationally possible. Maybe I'll plug the characters into the internet and see what happens. How smart might they get about our world? Next, I'll give the main character, loosely based on Lisa Meitner, the woman who first figured out that uranium fission bombs were possible, step-by-step notes on physics that I wrote from 1834 when quantum mechanics was discovered, not understood at that time, to today's theories of modern physics to see what happens. I expect limited results because some types of intelligence probably aren't fully amenable to spiderweb framework methods alone. Say intuition. You can try this. Like do-it-yourself biology kits, you can find this stuff online. Why? 30 plus years into my thought experiment on general intelligence, why? Because, as Aaron Sorkin wrote, because it's next. Because we came out of the cave and we looked over the hill and we saw fire, and we crossed the ocean and we pioneered the West and we took to the sky. The history of human exploration is hung on a timeline of exploration. And this This is what's next. Let's roll AFRL. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Once again, an incredible talk there. And what's amazing about the ideas posited here is just think about the possibilities. Really think about it. If we could talk to anybody in the past to inform us now in the present. I mean, I mentioned this is going to come back. With my history minor, I had some thoughts on this. And I was like, you know what? I could finally ask some hard-hitting history-related questions. Like, hey, Euclid, what helps shape your ideas of geometry? Yeah, see, it took a second. We got there. We got there. But jokes aside, I warned you. But jokes aside, it doesn't take an Einstein to see how brilliant this is. So thank you again, Dr. Alanese, for everything you shared up here. That was awesome. Another round of applause, everybody. Now, as we look to the past to inform the future, let's return to the present. AFRL is doing some really amazing work with cognition and the brain to help better inform artificial intelligence systems. Another question for you regarding this. What if we had the means to turn training as we know it on its head? What if we could better inform airmen and guardians, not only retain skills, but learn them in a more timely manner? We have the answer to that. We have our next speaker, who's head of the iNeura LS program, which is working that very question. What if we could change training? What if that's all possible? But I'm getting ahead of myself. I will let the man himself explain it. As we welcome to the stage, we got there, Dr. Nate Bridges, and his talk, Moving Beyond Averages.
All right, show of hands. How many of you all own a cell phone? Right, pretty much everyone, no surprise. Okay, what about the Android users? That's your Google Pixel, your Samsung Galaxy, et cetera. Okay, I see some, okay, I hear some hissing, I see some people, okay. All right, well, okay, maybe we'll try something else. What about, the iPhone users out there? Okay, I see the rest of the group that uses the iOS operating system. So I could have done this for multiple categories. PC versus Mac, Nike versus Adidas, Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, Home Depot versus Lowe's, so on, and seen the same thing. And what that reveals is a simple truth. A lot of things in our society are designed for large groups of people. But here's the thing, we're all different, right? We have different needs, different preferences, and yet we're forced to choose. Instead, picture a future where we don't have to choose. Instead of an iOS or an Android OS, we'd have a UOS, a world when you need it, where you need it, how you need it.
Mr. Theodore Twombly, welcome to the world's first artificially intelligent operating system. We'd like to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
Are you social or antisocial?
I guess I haven't been social in a while.
How would you describe your relationship with your mother? Thank you. Please wait as your operating system is initiated.
Hello, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Samantha.
So what you just saw was from the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson. And as you saw, all he had to do, Joaquin that is, was answer a few questions, and an operating system quickly created an operating system to fit him, just like that. We thought about this 10 years ago, creating technology that instantly molds itself to us. Hi. I'm Dr. Nate Bridges. I'm a research biomedical engineer and program lead here at the AFRL, and I've been working the past several years on this very thing, creating technologies and capabilities that instantly mold themselves to us. As program lead, I've directed the technical and scientific efforts of 56 scientists and engineers across 3 AFRL technology directorates, and teams from coast to coast. And they have been working on creating a stronger symbiosis between technology and the brain. I've served on 3 DARPA programs and have worked within the AFRL Transformational Capabilities Program Office to push state-of-the-art human-computer interfaces. My research has spanned impact biomechanics, cognitive and behavioral neuroscience, neuroergonomics, and neuroengineering. But everything that I have done has focused on protecting, rehabilitating, and improving the human brain. Now you might ask, why have I done this? It's because it kills me. It kills me when I see others fail to reach their potential because the technology they are forced to use limits them. Similarly, it kills me when I see the user fail to reach their potential because, or I flip that, when you see technology fail to reach its potential because of the user. This is largely because we design around averages. However, if we want to push our limits as a society and reach our potential, we need to move beyond averages. So for today, let's break down the constraints of using an average. Let's explore the technologies we've been working on to push past these averages. And then finally, look at how this extends to society in the future that we see as possible. So let's take a step back. In the book, The End of Average, Todd Rose explains that from the 1920s to the 1950s, the Air Force designed around averages. And they did this by creating a cockpit with fixed dimensions based off of more than 4,000 pilots and 140 dimensions. Not only was the cockpit standardized, but so was the size and the shape of the seat, the distance from the pedal to the stick, the height of the windshield, even the shape of the flight helmet. However, a young lieutenant asked a very simple question. How many of our pilots actually fall within this average range? Pretty reasonable, right? Surprisingly, out of the 10 dimensions deemed most relevant for physical design, not one pilot out of the 4,063 pilots fit within those average ranges. Not one. There was no such thing as an average pilot. We have been designing a cockpit for the average pilot and actually designed it for no one. And that's the point I want to hammer today. There's no such thing as average when it comes to people. We are different. Average is a mathematical construct, not reality. Unfortunately, designers still design around averages, and that's because you can't make a single device for every single person. Instead, designers are forced to shape or mold their technology to a few different averages by creating a few different versions, if they do this at all. But again, you can't make something that fits everyone's needs, and our needs, they change over time. And, I think to push forward, there's a lot of innovation that we need to do. Now, I will say that individuals have been working on resolving this problem. So if you look at work, and I think I lost my place here. Right, so it's impossible to design something that meets everyone's needs. And what was after that? Right, we're all different and our needs change over time. So I lost my place there, but the point there, and again, everyone is an average. That was problem number one, right? But that was problem number one, right? So if you fast forward to the future in my Air Force story, we now have cockpits and equipment with adjustability built in. Think of your car seat. You can move it forward, you can move it backwards, you can move it up, you can move it down. That's so that the average seat can be adjusted to the individual. Great, right? Well, think a little bit more about that. You still have to adjust the seat, which is bringing us to problem number 2. We have to tell technology what our needs are. So going back to the phone, most phones have adjustability or settings built in so that you can make changes to meet the individual's needs. But the thing is, we don't always know what we need. And even if we know what we need, we have to stop what we're doing to make changes. And then, our ability to make the changes, it was limited by the initial design. Guess what that was? Problem number 1. So our ability for technology to reach its greatest potential was doomed from the start. In short, we may make great technologies, but it's often limited by the user. Now, others have been working in this area. For example, let's think. There's the education system with Montessori and Khan Academy. We have treadmill belts that can adjust speed based off of the heart rate. We even have cars that can track your eye patterns and use artificial intelligence to determine how drowsy you are, and then take corrective action. However, a lot of technology forgets one of the most important elements that makes us who we are as human beings, the brain. And given that, we at the AFRL have been working on how to better integrate the brain into technology through a program called the Individualized Neural Learning System, or iNeuroLS. The vision has been to empower technology so that technology can adapt to individuals' needs given what the brain tells us. A helpful way to think about this is sense, assess, and augment. So you want to sense valuable information about the human, assess meaning from that, and then do something useful through augmentation. So on the sense side, we've been using what are called brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, or brain-machine interfaces, or BMIs. These technologies non-invasively and safely read brain signals. You can read the electrical components of brain signals through what's called electroencephalography, or EEG. So think of what you might wear at the doctor's office. You can see an example there at the top. Or you can read the magnetic components of brain signals through what's called magnetoencephalography, or MEG. We've been working to integrate these into virtual and augmented reality. So think of your Oculus Rift, your HoloLens, having access to your brain and what that could do. Similarly, you can read a person's eye patterns through eye tracking with eye tracking glasses as an example, and you can see a colleague of mine wearing those at the bottom there. So that was sense. Then you have to assess the meaning of what you're sensing. So think of your brain having its own personal translator. It's one thing to hear what a person is saying, it's another to understand the meaning of what they're saying, which is what I mean by assess. In our case, we use advanced machine learning or artificial intelligence algorithms that interpret meaning from brain signals. We can figure out your different cognitive state, like your level of attention or arousal. We can even figure out which parts of your brain are engaged during a cognitive task. So an example you see behind me is changes in brain pattern activity as a person is thinking about moving their hands. So that's the assess side. Then we move to the augment side. We've been exploring 2 different types of technology, neuromodulation and virtual/augmented reality. Neuromodulation uses safe forms of energy to jazz up the human brain to improve cognitive performance. Researchers at our lab have used both light, electricity, magnetic, even acoustic energy to target selective brain regions to improve cognitive performance. And you can see there's a picture of me wearing some of the technology, and there's some of the work that we've been doing in that neuromodulation space. However, most neuromodulation is provided at the same time, in the same way, for everyone. We envision a future where instead, you can provide neuromodulation given what that individual's brain tells us and not treat them as an average. Similarly, when it comes to virtual or augmented reality, instead of providing content in the same way at the same time for everyone, we can adapt that content given what that person's brain tells us. In the future, we're hoping for something like this.
Yeah, Mikey, I think he likes it. How about some more? Hell yes. Hell yeah. How was he? 10 hours straight. He's a machine. I know Kung Fu.
I know Kung Fu. I love that scene. And hopefully you guys will see that we're a lot closer to something like this than you might not have realized before. In fact, think about it now, what the future would look like for us if it was like in The Matrix or Her, like you saw before, even if it was just pieces of it. It would be a future where the individual and technology could perform at their greatest potential. A future where the things that surround us would finally meet our needs. We'd be able to rapidly acquire skills and knowledge when it's needed, which would reduce training costs. We'd have an agile human being that could adapt to needs in an ever-changing world. Additionally, one person could do multiple things. We'd finally have a technology that actually meets our needs instead of having to settle for one built for an average. This is going to promote inclusivity for those who don't fall within the average. And that's going to lead to stronger teams. We could devote 100% of our time on the things that matter instead of spending some of our time on adjusting the technology to fit us. To get there, we as a community, and I'm talking to you all out here and online, we need to start working on improving how we sense, assess, and augment the human. To summarize, we limit ourselves by designing to averages. We've taken steps to improve and address those limitations, but we still have a long way to go. We need to start incorporating more individuality into our work, and we're taking steps towards that by improving how we sense, assess, and augment the human. So let's stop designing for the average and instead design for the individual. For those of you out here that work either in the sense, assess, or augment side of things, think about how you can start incorporating individuality into your work today, now, instead of constraining yourself to an average. And those of you over here that are, consumers of the technology, which is really all of us, think about, start demanding customization instead of accepting the average status quo that's presented to you. I asked, let's change the culture and the future together. Thank you.
My friend, you're amazing. Nate, that was awesome. See, the work that his team is doing really goes to show how we can make more inclusive forms of training, really break down barriers, and like he said, break the average. And it may even have someone like me saying someday, I know Kung Fu. Wachowski's calling. Now, that said, as we move ahead here, we are getting closer and closer to our midway point. But something important to note before we get there. Some of you may not know this, but this kind of research that Nate's doing, you think would turn some heads, right? And it did. Last night, he received the AFRL Early Career Award as one of the attendees there, so big round of applause for him. So well-deserved, incredible research. But like I mentioned, we are officially at our intermission. So we ask all of you to return here at 1:55 for about a 15-minute intermission, and we'll start the second half of the show then. So go forth, conquer, and do what you must. We'll meet back soon. for getting back and getting excited. So we will start in just a few minutes, but please make your way back to your seats when you can. About time to kick back into things, so when you get a moment, we'll go back to our seats and start part 2 of AFRL Inspire. So please, take your time, we'll get ready. Hopefully we're all still feeling inspired, feeling energized. Yeah, come on, get that energy. So I want to reference something again we did at the top. I want to thank everybody here for being present for this amazing event we did here online. We got a couple hundred folks up there, so thank you all for being here. We are so excited to present this to you anywhere you are in the world. Thank you again. Thanks to all of you. So another round of applause for our audience. Come on, yeah. Now, as we start the next half here, our next talk is going to metaphorically and possibly quite literally launch us into the next part. But question for you all beforehand. Who here is afraid of failure? We got some honest folks, I am too. Afraid of a project going wrong, not quite making the mark. See, and I understand, trust me, I'm up here doing this, I get it. So the interesting thing is our next speaker isn't. In fact, many researchers and engineers you speak to would say quite the opposite. Failure isn't the end of a project or something to be afraid of. It's something to help push it further, educate you. To help drive that point home, we now present and welcome to the stage Dr. Richard Bedlow in his talk, Groundbreaking Innovation at the Speed of Failure.
So about a year and a half ago, I was part of a team developing an articulating missile. Spring 2022, we decided to test our design with a sled test. This particular articulating missile, just aft of the head was a joint that allowed the missile to look around while it was tracking targets in the air. And a sled test is exactly what it sounds like. We take the test article, we strap it down to a carrier sled, mount some really big rockets behind it, and fire it down what is essentially a railroad track. So we're at the sled track at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. It's warm, it's sunny, there's a few clouds in the sky. It is a perfect day for a sled test. And we're standing on the roof of the control tower watching all of this happen. The control tower is a small 2-story building, a couple hundred yards from the starting line. So it's time. We light the rockets. It goes screaming down the track. We feel the compression wave hit us as it breaks the sound barrier. And the head falls off and goes sailing over the top of the target at the end of the track. Fantastic, right? So a few minutes later, the track facility manager comes up to the roof where we all are, and he dismisses everyone who's not a lead on the program, which is not normal. So it's just the 4 of us standing there alone on this rooftop. And he comes over to us, and in his most solemn tone, he says, "I am sorry, we have had an unexpected event." And our reaction to this was, "Oh my God, I know. Did you see how far it went? That was so cool." Just exploding with excitement. And he just stands there and stares at us, wide-eyed, just dumbfounded. He didn't understand how we could be so excited. He didn't get it. And that's what I would like to talk to you about today, why we were so excited to fail. My name is Dr. Richard Beblow. I'm a research engineer here at AFRL in the Aerospace Systems Directorate, and I have built my career on researching and designing morphing structures. Morphing structures being systems that can adapt to changes in their environment to optimize their performance, like morphing missiles, articulating missiles. Dwight D. Eisenhower, commander of the Allied forces in World War II and one of the architects of the invasion of Normandy, D-Day, famously once said, "In preparation for battle, I have always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." One of the greatest military strategists in modern times said, "Plans are useless." What he meant was nothing ever goes to plan. But if you're going to succeed, you need to be prepared. And planning is how you prepare. Plan for success, but be prepared for the inevitable. This perspective applies to developing new technologies. We need to test new technologies earlier than we think we're ready to for the potential to learn. And when we do that, failure is not an event. It's a perspective. Failure is not an event. It is a perspective. When we learn to anticipate failure and not fear it, to use it as a springboard to learning, we will achieve success faster. Everybody wants to achieve success faster today. Right? Transition technology faster, be agile, be responsive, move to the next step in the process faster. From a technology development perspective, this directly correlates to accepting more risk. And when you accept more risk, the probability of your missile experiencing an unscheduled disassembly naturally increases. But it's been shown over and over again that the quickest path to success when you're doing difficult tasks is to fail fast and fail often. Fail fast and fail often, meaning build and test as early as you can, knowing it might not work the first time. But if we wait until we are 100% sure our design's going to work, we've waited too long. There's no better example of this than SpaceX. Right? SpaceX has a goal of making spaceflight cheaper by reusing booster rockets. And a few years ago, they set about the task of learning how to autonomously land them. And they failed, and failed, and failed. Until December 2015, they did it. And they did it sooner than a lot of people thought possible. But what if you don't? What if you don't accept this perspective of fail fast, fail often? Well, if you're doing something truly revolutionary, you run the risk of failing late. What does that look like? It looks like this. Do you recognize this data? The red data points are failures, the green data points are successes. Almost every engineering student on the planet has seen this data. We use it in statistics classes to demonstrate the inevitable effect of extrapolating, meaning trying to predict an event outside of the data that you have. In this case, predicting what happens at x equals 31. So if we did a test at x equals 31, would it be a success? The x-axis represents temperature in Fahrenheit at launch, and the y-axis is the number of booster rocket O-rings that show damage upon inspection after recovery. I'm sure by now most of you have recognized this is the data that NASA had prior to the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. NASA's booster rockets had never been given the opportunity to fail. This highlights three truths. One, the longer you delay testing, the longer you delay critical opportunities to learn. As engineers, we like to admire our problems as we drive towards perfection. But often, testing an 80% solution is a faster path to success. Two, late failures have long-lasting impacts. Early failures can be corrected. Test as early and as often as you can and embrace the risk because of the potential to learn. And three, the risk stays the same. The probability of failure stays the same. The cost increases with time. In the case of Challenger, the ultimate cost, making unexpected events less tolerable with time. NASA's risk tolerance has never been the same after Challenger. Fail fast, fail often. So, you do a test, and it doesn't go to plan, then what? Standing on top of the control tower in Florida at Eglin, when we saw the head get ripped off of our test article, we were excited because we knew the test just gained value. We knew we were about to learn things that we hadn't even anticipated as things we needed to learn. Everything had more value. The data we collected had more value. Our observations had more value. The test had more value because we needed it to do root cause analysis. The amazing thing about root cause analysis is it is incredibly freeing. There are no bad ideas. The head fell off the test article. It doesn't get any worse. Everything is on the table, right? What happens if you hit the thing with a hammer? I don't know. Try it. So we did, and it made a dent. Great. Now what? We looked at all the data we collected, made a series of plausible explanations that would explain our observations, and then systematically started to fill in the gaps, right? Experiment. What happens to the status lights when a control board loses power? What happens when a breaker trips? How much friction is there if the skin gets pushed to one side? And in doing this, we not only determined what went wrong and how to fix it, but also what almost went wrong and took steps to mitigate those risks too. Often when people do root cause analysis, they'll do what's called the 5 whys, which is part of the Toyota production system, which postulates that to get to the root of a problem, you have to ask why 5 times. So, why did the head come off our test article? Well, because the aerodynamic load was too great. Why was the load so high? Because the articulation system articulated the nose too high. Well, why did it do that? Because the rotor, which is part of the actuation system, didn't operate as expected. Why didn't it? Likely, it had insufficient power. Well, why didn't it have enough power? Likely, a breaker tripped, isolating one of the 2 batteries that powered the actuation system. It was likely a faulty breaker, which was correctly spec'd and should have been fine, but failed anyway. And in doing so, highlighted a weakness in the robustness of our design. So, moving forward, what can you do? If you are developing the next cutting-edge technology or helping your daughters with their Common Core math homework, if it's your first time, the purpose, the expectation is to learn. And to do that, you need to do 3 things. Okay? First, have the right perspective about your goals. For us, for the sled test, it didn't really matter what happened. It was the first time anyone had ever tried to do what we were trying to do. What mattered was we got the data we needed to figure out why what happened, to learn. 2, have a plan for success. Now, to be clear, I am not advocating that everyone take a Edisonian approach to problem solving, meaning randomly try things until they work, or take on an unreasonable amount of risk. That's a horrible way to do research. Take risk, but calculated risk. And to the best of your knowledge, it should work. But it's research. Understand that your knowledge is limited. And 3, be prepared for the unexpected. Take data, observe, have scripts ready to go so you can analyze data real time while the test is fresh in your mind. Set yourself up for being able to do root cause analysis afterwards. It doesn't matter if you're doing a benchtop test or a full-scale rocket test. Always do quality engineering and let the lessons of test boost progress. Because the only failed test is a test you didn't learn anything from. So, back to our sled test. We did exactly this process of going through root cause analysis, identifying all the issues, proposing solutions. And soon, we're going back to Florida to do another sled test with an entirely redesigned test article, incorporating all of the lessons learned from the first test. And we plan to succeed. So remember, failure is not an event, it is a perspective. The quickest path to success is often to fail fast and fail often. And if you have the right perspective, a good plan, and are prepared, you can't fail. It's only a matter of time before you succeed. Thank you, and have a fantastic day.
Now, as we saw, that program Richard he was working on Mutant. I mean, to see what's happened there, to see that his team is able to innovate, work, and take what they've learned to the next sled test, I mean, we know it's going to be a success, right? No matter what happens. So another round of applause for him and his team. Amazing work, amazing work. Now, like some of you out there, when I hear the word mutant, it brings me back to my childhood, thinking about comics and movies. I'm talking about X-Men. Any fans out there? There we go. Yeah, I'm more of a cable guy myself, but love them all. That said, the thing about X-Men that always comes to me is the idea that our differences, people may point out thinking we're different because we're failures. We're not. We're made better for it because of what makes us different. And that show and that series really proves that point. Now our next speaker, well, he wouldn't call himself Professor X. The work he is doing to help bolster resiliency for our Air Force fleet of aircraft is next level brilliant. The work that they're doing right now, Forge the Fire, the crucible of partnerships, is showing how we can not only ask it, or really answer an age-old problem we've had in humanity of knowing when to strike when the iron's hot and how to take advantage of that. How's that being done? Well, Andrew Gilman's about to come up here and tell you with his talk, Striking When the Innovation's Hot.
What if we were in battle and couldn't manufacture guns or bullets, or parts to keep our air fleet flying? We're seeing the warning signs today with headlines like these. Cascading issues, keeping Air Force, Navy planes grounded. U.S. Air Force fleet's mission-capable rates are stagnating. And only a tiny fraction of U.S. military aircraft met mission-capable rate goals in FY21. Why are we struggling to keep our fleets in the air? The problem is similar to maintaining a classic car. Hobbyists do everything to keep these cars in tip-top shape for the car show, pouring time and money into them. But when that one critical piece breaks, you can't go down the road to AutoZone to get it. You've got to get creative in how you find that part. You may scour online dealers like eBay, visit salvage yards to find good parts from broken down ones, go to swap meets at the car show, and even consider custom ordering a part to be made by a machinist. All these take time, effort, and creativity. For Air Force systems, the underlying issue is a lack of agility in our supply chains and manufacturing systems to produce what we need when we need it. If the manufacturing system that originally made something is no longer in operation, we must pay in time and money for re-engineering. In order to dramatically change this landscape, disruptive manufacturing technologies are needed. I'm Andrew Gilman, and I'm working to transform brittle robotic systems designed for completing millions of repetitive tasks into machines that can adapt to new ones by the day. And my work has caused me to adapt as well. From a stationary life to that of a nomad researcher, I focus on embedding myself in expert beehives, where a large number of collisions occur naturally among leaders in the community. Before the days of assembly lines, we relied on expert blacksmiths to be our agile makers in society. They weren't just fabricating weapons and tools, but they were also repairing and maintaining them. Artisans have kept the craft alive through modern times, but we haven't relied on a blacksmithing concept to manufacture parts for our most exquisite aerospace systems. And while humans can be incredibly agile, there can be challenges in achieving the consistency and reliability that we require. But what if we had a reliable robotic blacksmith with the agility of a human? We could deploy these systems all over the world, where and when we need them. I'm part of a growing team of academia, industry, and government partners working to make the idea of a robotic blacksmith a reality. And I'm not just a team member from afar. I embed myself multiple days per week at a university lab, colliding in a vibrant and collaborative beehive with students, professors, and researchers as we work together and learn to create better technology faster. After all, our maintenance depots need these solutions quickly. The headlines introduced up front only begin to describe the situation we're in. Our fleets have average mission-capable rates of around 70%, meaning that 30% are in a state of repair and can't be deployed, and some are as low as 50%. As one of the lead automation engineers at our maintenance depots, Shane Groves, puts it, the main problem we have right now is that companies have plenty of work, and when I ask them for one or two parts, they don't see the return in tooling everything up for a small order. We're getting quotes for 4-year delivery times to get some of the right parts. This dilemma can leave our depots taking good parts from one plane to fix another, effectively cannibalizing one plane for the benefit of another one. How do we improve this situation and keep this from happening? How do we produce the parts that we need and the quantities we need quickly and reliably? To tackle this challenge of creating manufacturing systems that can produce in small batches, the team I'm a part of was formed 4 years ago, the Digital Manufacturing Research Team. We were tackling these challenges by exploring digital and robotic technologies, but with a limited budget and without a lab to start. Many of us in this audience know it can take years and significant funds to develop a new lab on a military installation, and it's hard to find critical talent at the intersection of robotics, artificial intelligence, and manufacturing. But we set out to build a vision and a team, but it was hard to scale up quickly. We put job ads out for robotics and machine learning engineers, but struck out time and time again and had not filled that role multiple years in. These challenges exist at the depot too. They couldn't always get well-integrated robotic systems to perform tasks well. Systems had been delivered, demonstrated once, and then placed in the corner to collect dust, given inadequate performance. I came to understand that this was going to take a unique assembly of resources, both people and infrastructure. People. Yep. We use our partnerships a lot at AFRL, but I wanted to explore a new way of partnering through active and routine collaboration and around a challenge that would unite people from government, academia, and industry. Towards this goal of creating a robotic blacksmith, I engineered my own Nomad Lab ecosystem to bring all of this together. As our team was growing, we identified an academic lab down the road in Columbus at The Ohio State University, just an hour drive from here in Dayton. The concept of metamorphic manufacturing, or robotic blacksmithing, had in fact been proposed by a group of experts in the US, many of whom were professors at Midwest universities, including Ohio State. And this lab had just received a consigned cohort of multiple large industrial robots, and the lead investigators shared the excitement for tackling the Air Force's challenges. But before we could begin to develop that prototype robotic blacksmith, we need to understand the problem from firsthand sources. Since the existence of our team, I've made many trips to our partners at the depot, including one in Warner Robins, Georgia. I came to learn of components being machined out of large blocks of metal with lots of material waste. I learned of thin-walled structures being pressed from sheet metal that required significant re-engineering to get the process performing to many decades before. I shared these insights with our academic partners, and we collectively rallied around developing a system that could produce parts quickly using a robotics system. We iterated on the types of parts to start with and kept these sustainment engineers in the loop every step of the way. The first task were to replicate the critical aspects that a blacksmith does. We started with a forge press that you'll see in any artisanal blacksmith's workshop, and we added digital control valves and sensors to automate its operation. This would replicate a blacksmith's hammer strikes on a part lying against the anvil. We needed a suite of sensors to replicate the blacksmith's senses. A robot arm could take the part from the oven, put it in the forge press and deform the metal, but the arm would stop functioning if too large of a force was felt. So a sensor was added to the end of the arm to replicate a human's ability to adjust the grip based on the reaction of the part following a strike. We needed a heat source to increase the part's temperature, making it easier to form the part into the desired shape. So we took a standard laboratory oven and automated its operation. And we utilized an industrial 3D camera to capture the shape change over time. Like nearly all research and development, this system didn't come together smoothly. Sensors didn't always work as intended, and the algorithms for synthesizing the camera data to understand the current part shape weren't accurate enough at first to understand the changes being made. And one of the biggest challenges was to begin to replicate a blacksmith's mind. In other words, how would we take all this sensor information and decide how to strike the part next? This is where the true value of creating an active, collaborative beehive would really pay off. One person debugging a piece of code in the lab could quickly turn into all hands on deck. With the sound of the system turning on, we'd set aside our current tasks, put on our safety glasses, and gather around the robotic forming system to assess its current operation. We'd watch the system until it reached a roadblock, and then collectively exchange ideas on how we need to reconfigure the system or rewrite code. And then we iterated, collectively, until the system had formed the part's shape, as intended, autonomously, without human intervention. It wasn't just me, a nomad researcher in a partner's lab. It was undergraduate and graduate students, research engineers, postdocs, and professors, engaging together in the same space, collectively deciding on the course of action that will lead to the successful development of this prototype. At the conclusion of developing this prototype system, I returned with the system and the team to Warner Robins Air Logistics Center in Georgia. Just as it had been designed to do in the lab, the system ran autonomously for multiple hours, incrementally shaping the part into the desired shape. This was deemed one of the most successful industry-academia lab partnership demos of its kind to be performed at this depot. Shane Groves, one of the key depot engineers who introduced the problem up front, said, "It's the way it was designed to work from the start. AFRL develops technology with the help of their partners, and then we help them test it, and then we transition together as a team into production." Shane usually recognized what a good partnership can create. He added, The people who are successful are those who are agile and can adapt to changes, and the systems then have to do the same. In other words, it's people and robots working together that are going to shape our future technologies. The development of this system is just the first step in creating more and more types of parts. And since the initial development of this system, the speed is improving dramatically, and the number of partners is growing as well. A number of additional Midwest universities have joined Ohio State through a National Science Foundation program and has increased the amount of funding by more than 10 times our original project investment. And it's not just us in aerospace defense who are interested. Sister agencies in the Army and Navy suffer from the same challenges. In the medical field, sees a future of more customizable surgical parts that can lead to reduced surgery times and better patient outcomes. The robotic blacksmith is needed across industry sectors and will all benefit by sharing our challenges and solutions. Revolutionary manufacturing technologies, like the robotic blacksmith, show the promise of overcoming our grounded fleets. Because I work closely with our partners, we're able to develop a prototype system that can make parts on demand in the low batches that we desire. This effective collaboration proved that combining the collective knowledge of humans is the best way forward. So I invite all of you, find that partner who can help you in your work. Create a beehive of experts where we can help the warfighter together. I ask you, who do you need in your beehive? Don't wait to answer that question. Make a list right now. Start connecting with them and work to advance your technology area faster. Thank you.
I know we just clapped, but honestly, let's hear it again for Andrew, the Nomad Researcher Gilbin. Truly amazing. The robotic blacksmith project, I mean, what a brilliant idea. And it's really going to help the resiliency of our fleets now and into the future. But how are we finding the right people to man teams like that, to man critical needs? Well, our next speaker is not only going to answer that, but it's a driving force behind that very idea. Finding out how we can better leverage partnerships with academia and industry to find the correct people to do this, to get better results for research and development. Anissa Lumpkin is a person that's not only going to tell you how it's being done, but for folks inside and outside of AFRL, take notes. Because she's helping drive that very force to show how we can not only answer the questions and problems of today, but push that to tomorrow with diverse and, well, honestly, much needed solutions. That said, let's hear how she's driving this idea and making it possible through the power of influence. Please welcome to the stage, Anissa Lumpkin.
So, for those of us that have kids or just a busy house full of people, perhaps you can relate to this. My house smells amazing due to a fresh out of the oven sweet potato pie, or perhaps you're more of a pumpkin pie person like my husband. And I go to the drawer to get some forks. There's no forks there. Okay, let me look in the dishwasher. There's a couple of forks there, but they're dirty. Where are all the forks? So I call the culprits to the kitchen, my kids. Most of those forks are in the trash somewhere, outside, or under the couch. Those forks will never get back, right? But we needed a solution to this plan. Funding. Buy more forks, take inventory of the new forks, and definitely set a kid's dishwashing schedule. I'm Anissa Lumpkin, an operations research analyst with the Air Force Customer Engagement Directorate. And today, I'm going to share with you why it is so important to take a hard look at your tables and figure out who is missing, and then use the power of influence to fill those chairs. So previously, I managed the Air Force Research Laboratory Small Business Innovation Research Small Business Technology Transfer Program, as we say, SIBR-SITR. This program is commonly referred to as America's Seed Fund, right? So the founder of SBIR, Roland Tibbets, in the 1980s, believed in converting government R&D into commercial applications and technological innovations, therefore stimulating aggregate economic growth. Congress referred to the SBIR program as potentially the most significant program in the areas of science and technology of this century. In 2019, the Air Force launched a series of pitch days, and I awarded millions of dollars through the Air Force SBIR Sitter program. And at these pitch days, it was so exciting because I was able to meet firsthand these small businesses and university partners that I had been doing contracts with for so long, and finally got a chance to see firsthand their technologies and their journeys to working in the SBIR and Sitter program. But there were some of us that were missing from the table. There wasn't anybody there that looked like me or attended a historically black college and university, an HBCU. So I did some research, did a little data call search, and the results were alarming. There were zero participation with small businesses that partnered with HBCUs. The significant multi-million-dollar Air Force program that had been going on for decades. So what was the solution? The first step in the power of influence is to ask and engage. So do you think that zero participation in this program is okay? Not on my watch. So after engaging and asking the Air Force, we had to put together a plan. I reached out to anybody, right? I'll call anybody, I'll brief anybody. I reached out to every HBCU president, provost, dean, College of Engineers, anybody that would talk to me. And I simply asked, why? The answers varied, but the overall feedback was just the lack of outreach and engagement for them to just understand the process. So what are we to do? So with that, the next step is to make sure that we are going to our roots, right? So I went back to Tennessee State University, the land of golden sunshine. Go Tigers. And this is the place where I learned my foundation. I got my bachelor's in aeronautical and industrial engineering technology. I also completed Air Force ROTC, where I earned my commission as a United States officer. This place set my HBCU and Air Force pride. So I was welcomed with open arms by the Office of Sponsored Research Program Director, and we went over the triumphs and challenges that I faced ahead, from reducing barriers to entry to lack of resources, training, and the vital tech connections with small businesses. The next step in the power of influence is to legitimize my leadership. I took the data and all of the research and I presented it to my two AFRL directors at the time, the Director of Air Force Small Business Office and the Director of Air Force SBIR Sitter at the time. Mr. Shahadi's in the audience. And after looking at it, they both gave me the green light to ensure that we could go out and find out just how we can make sure that all universities are a part of the SBIR Sitter program. But I had no money, no funding. I had no contractor to help me execute this mission, so I reached out to financing and contracting. And then I needed a program to have some sort of small business to help me run this mission. And from there, I attended several events at the Wright Brothers Institute for their Collider events. And I had been hearing about a wonderful small business. And I just happened to meet the president, Infinite Management Solutions. And from there, I received another green light from our director to go ahead and make that award to IMS, a Black woman-owned company, another first for AFRL Small Business Office. So now that we had our places in line, we immediately founded the Air Force HBCU Outreach Initiative. And that initial goal was to increase government-funded research and development dollars to underserved universities. I just told you, I briefed anybody, right? I briefed the AFRL commander. I even ended up in front of the Air Force chief scientist. And they all gave me overwhelming support of this program to proceed forward. So the next step is to connect and align. Connecting and aligning ensures that we are aligning our technological capabilities to our Department of Defense technologies for our universities. We partner with several organizations such as Apex, who is an AFRL partnership intermediary, who helped us with cyber training and also data analytics. Also other associations like BDPA, who helped us with stakeholders and other resources. We're continuing to path to make sure that we have all of the pieces in line to ensure that we're helping our underserved universities. And part of the connectivity, we found small businesses, founders who were graduates of HBCUs, but also well-versed in the cyber process. Enter Ohio-based Spectral Energies, for example. Their president and staff sat down with TSU and discussed marrying their two technologies together. This was a perfect match, and I gotta say, it's because of the outreach. TSU and Spectral Energies technologies together resulted in AI-based sensor fusion modeling, advanced visual system software for engine control systems, and this technology would be crucial for future autonomous vehicles such as self-driving cars. Spectral Energies also collaborated with North Carolina A&T University, an HBCU that is ranked among the top 200 engineering schools in this country. The work that they did collaborated in AI-based modeling and control for scramjet engines. So finally, now that we have all the pieces together, it was time to activate hope by providing a reason why. Finally, so excited, HBCU scientists and engineers were getting their lack resources, training, and all the pieces that it needs to get them a fair seat at the table. The Air Force leadership even went on to be inspired to support the Air Force University Affiliated Research Consortium, a $90 million program awarded for tactical autonomy to Howard University. Thanks to the generous support of programs such as AFWorks, we saw an increase of $20 million for small businesses that were partnering with HBCUs and minority-serving institutions through the CIBR and CITR program. This program has generated and grown to offer quarterly newsletters, our popular Ask Me Anything events with notable guest speakers, as well as 4 annual colliders, with the last one being held at Florida A&M University, and we had a great time, as you can see here. This program initiative enabled underserved universities, minority-serving institutions, our Air and Space Force, and our small business community to come together and address the issues in making sure everyone had a fair seat at the table. Moving forward, I ask you, who is missing, who is not represented at your power of influence? Think about the teams that you run, organizations that you lead, teams that you're a part of, and ask yourself, who is missing from this table? So, I challenge you now, take out your cell phones. You heard me, take out your cell phones. And I want you to think about that person that you really want to be there and be at your table. Let them know that you value their input. Go ahead and call me General Kane. You can put my number. You value their input, and let them know that you want them to be there. Thank you.
Anissa, you should have reached out to Andrew and his team. You could have got the robotic blacksmith to help make some forks. Save the dinner, right? I kid, of course. But that's an example of what kind of people we have in the lab, these brilliant minds we can collaborate with to answer today's problems. And Anissa's talk really illustrates that point well, that we or someone else here can be that wingman to find that solution and to help problems today, tomorrow, far beyond. But who is helping keep our fleet, our Air Force fleet, up in the air, literally? Well, the answer, part of that, is our next speakers, 2 former Air Force fighter pilots. They'll be representing the Warfighter today, the people who are protecting our nation and our allies through active deployment, research opportunities, joint training exercises, and so much more. And they're going to be sharing their experiences and perspectives to illustrate the point why warfighters need to be in AFRL's proverbial room where it happens. So, to illustrate that better than I ever could, please welcome to the stage. We have, well, as we get up here, we have welcome to the stage James, or Sarsaparilla, Kevin Price, and their talk about why it's important to continue amplifying warfighter culture.
I was an active duty Air Force pilot.
I was an Air National Guard pilot.
I served for 20 years as a fighter pilot and a test pilot.
I split my time as a fighter pilot and as an Air Force civilian.
I primarily flew F-15s.
I flew F-16s.
Well, I specialized in air superiority.
I was proficient in both air-to-air and air-to-ground missions.
I had 2 engines.
I had a wingspan smaller than a tennis court.
I had enough fuel to stay airborne for more than 5 minutes.
And I gunned your aircraft weekly in training.
I lost dozens of friends in aircraft accidents.
I lost several as well.
I am passionate about helping the Air Force and the Space Force succeed.
I'm also passionate about helping our Air Force and Space Force succeed.
We are AFRL researchers
who are amplifying warfighter culture.
My name is James Barella. I go by the call sign SAS. I'm the director of AFRL Strategic Partnering. And along with the F-15, I also flew F-117s, F-22s, and several other aircraft before I retired from my active duty career. I've been a civilian in AFRL for the past 7.5 years, working everything from innovation initiatives to classified technology development.
My name is Kevin Price. I'm a computer scientist here in AFRL's Aerospace Systems Directorate. I've had a blended Air National Guard, Air Force Reserve, and Air Force civilian career. I flew the F-16 with the Air National Guard and also during an exchange tour with the Netherlands Air Force. I came to AFRL militarily in 2014 and transferred here as a civilian in 2016. My work at AFRL focuses on improving aircraft safety and optimizing mission effectiveness through autonomy.
We talk a lot about research, about development, about making innovation happen. But question though, what innovation should we do? Our requirements come from the major commands, from Air Force Futures, from our commanders, but occasionally those requirements can be quite broad, such as develop a hypersonic vehicle, or develop autonomous technologies to enable manned-unmanned teaming. But things like how fast, how far, how many, and most importantly, what specific requirements do the warfighters need are often not well defined for us as researchers.
It is 1997, and when the U.S. is 4 years out from the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. I just come into an in my Air Force civilian role, I just come into an engineering group working hardware and software upgrades to the same model of F-16 I was flying with the Air National Guard. The central focus of that upgrade was a new navigation, GPS-based navigation system. The broad requirement was to integrate GPS while maintaining baseline navigation capabilities. From having flown the F-16, I had become aware and recognized a serious deficiency the F-16 had in the coordinate system that was used for the close air support or CAS mission, in which we protect our troops who are on the ground and come into very close proximity with the enemy. The Army used one coordinate system and the Air Force another, and as a result, the F-16 was very limited in its CAS mission capability. From a chance conversation with the lead navigation engineer, I learned that the new GPS system would support the system used by the Army, the coordinate system used by the Army. Working with the lead navigation engineer, Jeff, if you're listening today, thank you. I was able to influence the adoption of this coordinate system into the F-16. I actually led the design that was ultimately transitioned, fielded into well over 1,000 U.S. Air Force and partner F-16s. The new coordinate system fielded in the spring of 2001. Some 6 months later, the U.S. was at war in Afghanistan after the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. The new coordinate system was a major enabler in improving mission effectiveness and protecting our troops who would come under attack.
Same year, 1997, I was deployed to Saudi Arabia flying F-15s over Iraq. And I remember one particularly cloudy and moonless night flying along at Mach 1, 40,000 feet, when all of a sudden, all my displays went blank. So think about that for a minute. If you were to close your eyes, you would picture exactly what I saw at 40,000 feet in Mach 1. No stars, no moon, no horizon, no displays. Can you picture it? All right, I'm going to help you. Cut the lights. So to rectify this problem, I had to accomplish a 9-step procedure. Hold, reset gen, reset link, out of hold, eject cartridge, swap cartridge, select program, load castle right. All right, did you get all that? Let's try it again. Hold, reset gen, reset link, out of hold, eject cartridge, swap cartridge, select program, load, castle right. So that procedure took 14 seconds to complete. It required a 9-step process with multiple switches, multiple cartridge actions. That's a lot to remember. What if I did it out of sequence? What if I hit a wrong button? You know, it's tough enough trying to do all that here on the ground, right? Or as we like to say, 0 knots and 1 G. But what about at 40,000 feet and 10 miles per minute and 0 visual cues? It would have been nice if the avionics engineer or the computer scientist could have pictured what we just pictured. I would have appreciated a warfighter's perspective when this technology or this procedure was being developed. In other words, I would have appreciated an amplification of warfighter culture. So what is amplifying warfighter culture? Well, amplifying warfighter culture means connecting every airman and every guardian to the mission. It means bringing the end user to the very front of the design process. It means making sure we focus all our actions on operational success. And why is that important? Because when our warfighters are operating in combat, they don't have time for a 9-step process that takes 14 seconds. Think back to Kevin's GPS story and how that enabled precision targeting. When we amplify warfighter culture, we multiply mission effectiveness, and we save lives.
Another great example of incorporating the warfighter perspective is AutoGCAS, the Automatic Ground Collision Avoidance System, which has saved 13 F-16 pilots since 2014. Garnering the warfighter perspective was critical in ensuring that the system would function as designed, that would be accepted by the warfighter, and would ultimately save lives. AFRL, you did this.
In January 2018, AutoGCAS was credited with one of its most dramatic saves to date. A student pilot, on only his 8th training flight in the F-16, fell unconscious under high G-forces. In full afterburner, 55 degrees nose low, inverted, approaching supersonic speed, and only seconds away from death, AutoGCAS automatically executed a recovery maneuver to clear the rapidly rising terrain. Here is the recorded video of the F-16's head-up display during the actual operational AutoGCAS save.
Altitude. Altitude. Back. Flare. Pull up. Pull up.
All of us at AFRL, by keeping that warfighter perspective in the front of our minds, can better develop life-saving and transformational combat-enabling capabilities. But how can we gain that perspective as a standard operating procedure versus by chance, such as the example I gave you earlier with the F-16 coordinate system? Let's break it down into 3 steps.
First, own your legacy. Tell stories. Listen to stories. We've already started today by listening to 2 stories. Of course, mine was much better because it was about F-15s. Read books. Visit museums. This is your legacy. Own it. Second, make it real. Go out there and experience the warfighter perspective. Visit an operational base. Meet the people using your technology. A few years ago, we took a team out to Red Flag, the Air Force's premier aerial combat training exercise out at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. And for an entire week, our AFRL team got to smell the flight line, see a mass launch of 100 planes in 15 minutes, hear the roaring engines, even got to fly on a mission to feel the rumbling of the airplane and to experience the environment. You can bet that the Red Flag experience made it real for that team, and it's paying dividends in their daily work. And finally, connect the dots. Seek out users. Make an operationally informed connection between your technology and the warfighter. Connect the dots with warfighters.
Do you recognize any of these folks up here today? Let's help you out here a little bit. Older, grayer, but still here. Bolder too. So, for those in the audience, those of you that are either current or previous warfighters that have operational or test experience, whether it's pilot, maintainer, logistician, engineer, scientist, maintainer, intel, please stand up. There'll be a few. Sir, I know at least there's one other fighter pilot in the office here today, so, but not. And of course, across the entirety of AFRL, we have folks such as the general here, Sass and I, that are an available internal resource to you to collaborate, facilitate collaboration and communication with the warfighter beyond our walls. AFRL has taken other initiatives to connect with the warfighter. We have the new Customer Engagement Directorate, the Transformational Capabilities Office, we have the Mission Area Leads, and another thing which I'm quite passionate about is the Warfighter Working Group, something I'm directly involved with. What is the Warfighter Working Group? It is current or former operators within AFRL that are available to the lab, available to you as a researcher. We can answer questions like how fast, how far, how many. And most importantly, how would this technology, how could it be used and how would it be used? If we don't know the answer, Sass and I, we know people. From a long, long Air Force career, we can connect with them. So I would encourage you to take advantage of this Warfighter Working Group. You can find us, talk to me or Sass later. And for the researchers that are looking for Warfighter Working Group members, you can find that on the SME Tech Connect portal. And I think you'll benefit significantly from that. So connect the dots. We're here. Let's work together as a team.
It's part of a larger initiative we're working on to drive the fight and to strengthen partnerships both inside and outside of AFRL. In fact, my own directorate, the Strategic Partnering Directorate, was stood up just this year to harness the full power of the world's science and technology ecosystem in order to deliver those needed game-changing capabilities to airmen and to guardians. The Warfighter Working Group and the Strategic Partnering Directorate are just two of the initiatives that AFRL has started, and there are many more in the works as AFRL continues to strengthen partnerships and amplify warfighter culture en route to providing transformational and innovative capabilities. So, remember these 3 steps. Own your legacy. Make it real. Connect the dots. Did you see someone stand up that you didn't know was a warfighter? Go shake their hand. Go ask a question. Go listen to their stories. We are all AFRL researchers. We can all amplify warfighter culture. One team.
One fight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Sass and Kevin. Your journey of connecting research leads with warfighter needs really is showing that our one team, one fight mission is not only possible, it's happening. Now, while I'm no pilot, I do have a prop here. Back when I was a kid, my dad worked at GE Aviation, so he thought it'd be cool to get me a lovely F-16 model. And a colleague of mine did point out it's got some dated munitions, but it's still great. You can see right here, it's pretty cool. Now, that stated, I do have to say that because of owning this, I'm a little more partial to the F-16, so I'm sorry about that, Sass. And that said, too, for those of you online and those pretty close, you can notice this guy's a little worse for wear, missing some other munitions, parts have chipped off, the years have gone by. I'm going to have to pick on you one more time. Andrew, I need to connect with your people. Hopefully the robotic blacksmith can print off some tiny little parts to fix this. We'll reach it, talk after, don't worry. But that right there, though, that's a sign again of finding the right wingman for the right job, right? And that's what we've AFRL have the privilege of knowing, that we have these brilliant people to find. It's just knowing what they do. And that really illustrates what we've done here today. Connecting to the right people, finding the right team, building the best team. So, as festivities here begin to come to a close, and we approach the terminal here with our aircraft, AFRL Inspire only has a few minutes left. But that said, unbuckle your seatbelts, don't do that yet. The seatbelt sign's still on. Because we're going to take a moment here to reflect on what we learned today, to see kind of what we can take with us as we leave and go about our day. Our speakers have taught us that in order to build the best team, we need people like fellow co-pilots. We need warfighters, researchers, and engineers, whether they're materials, biomedical, anything. Even programmers, and even people like our unmanned systems that Matt Duquette's team is working on. There's so much out there to build that dream team. And more importantly, we need to make sure we're reaching out to the right people, our allied nations, academia, people out in industry and beyond, to really show that we are one team in one fight in a much broader category. That stated, as a dungeon master, remember that from the top, I do know that every great journey does have to come to a close, but it's the party or people that make that possible. So I do want to thank all the speakers today and everyone who took part. So let's give them a round of applause for the amazing work they did. So I will leave you with this. All the lessons we've learned today, let's take that out and inspire those around us, because our job is never really done. While I'm looking at all of you, I see the dream team, but there's parts that we still need to work on to improve and to make better. But every dream team and every person, or I should say initiative here, needs a great leader. So please welcome back to the stage for some closing remarks and closing thoughts, AFRL Commander, Brigadier General Scott Kane.
Well, I'll just say it's an amazing afternoon, and I appreciate everybody who made this happen for AFRL and everybody who's watching. I do want to give very special thanks to our speakers today. And I give them those thanks because they had the courage to take on tough problems, but the courage to get on this stage. Your guts are inspiring, so thank you. And as I get off the stage here, there was a little bit of a glimpse into the future there, but there's a little bit of a glimpse into the people of AFRL and the fire and all of them. And I want you to join us, and I thank you for joining us today. Thank you.